Today I wish everyone a powerful day. So, the greatest leader of all times and nations, Tikhanovskaya, has arrived in Ukraine for her first visit. It's impossible to know where Tikhanovsky went. He's likely getting used to the watches and earphones he collected in his fight against Lukashism, as he claimed. But before we start discussing this and other major news, there is something really important. That's sarcasm, of course. I'll show you something that usually isn't shown. How military recruitment officers are chased away in Western Ukraine. They were chased away here, a military man started talking to them, put on a mask, and all of them ran off. Look at how it happened here. Here, a police officer immediately hid behind his phone, and the others ran away. Basically, they scattered them like chickens in a coop. Everyone left, and now there's no one here. So, you can watch the full video on my Telegram channel because YouTube doesn't like swearing or violence, and there's plenty of both in the video. Subscribe to my Telegram, or rather, go there using this QR code. Just point your phone or tablet camera at it. Or, if you're watching me from a mobile device, there will be a link in the description of this video. Check it out, it'll be interesting. Then we are greeted by the greatest, now the leader of the Belarusian opposition, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya arrived in Kiev on her first official visit. It seemed like Tikhanovsky was always the leader, and he was the one who got out of prison and even started the fight against that very same Lukashism. In that very Philadelphia where he tried to read an English newspaper without knowing the English language. But now Tikhanovskaya has come herself without him. Where did he go? Why isn't he here? What kind of upheavals are happening in the kingdom? It's unclear. Nevertheless, they met, and Tikhanovskaya wrote on her Telegram channel that it was very important for her to start this visit by honoring the person who gave his life for the freedom of Ukraine and Belarus. Tikhanovskaya visited a cemetery, of which there are plenty in Ukraine now, and paid tribute there to a Belarusian volunteer who also died in this very war. By the way, there is even a recording of this holy visit, well, sacred rather, to Ukrainian soil. Here we see Tikhanovskaya getting off the train and being greeted. Just imagine, such an important leader visited Ukraine. Well, now I think that's a real victory, for sure. Victory, Kunashir and Iturup and Sakhalin, Kamchatka, what else is there? В общем, украинские ВСУ стоят уже там, вместе с Тихановской во главе. Цветочки, все красиво, все отлично, все довольны. Перемога за перемогой просто. Еще одна перемога — это с Люксембург. Cemeteries were the least for the grave of a certain Melnik, a figure of the OUN-UP, has expired. He was transported to Ukraine. And there are many different, also powerful leaders gathered there, and what really cracks me up are all these leaders from left to right. This is Sibiga, the greatest foreign minister of all time, of all nations. The suit, as always, fits perfectly, looks like it was made for him, just excellent. Then there's a guy. I actually have him on one of the preview options, with a huge, well-defined six-pack, Budanov and Yulia Sveridenko in some strange embroidered shirt with long sleeves. I don't even know what that embroidered shirt is meant for, but it looks very serious, like a real accessory, as if they had been preparing for the meeting for many months. Stefanchuk, who came from KVN, is now the head of the Verkhovna Rada. Yushchenko, with whom this mighty victory that was really a loss began, and Zelensky, who apparently is the one finishing this victory. These wonderful people, all of them are gathering to rebury Melnik, or rather they already have. By the way, Bandera's relatives didn't allow him to be reburied, probably to avoid trouble. They said, no, we don't need that. Then, another victory. NATO failed to agree on a plan for mandatory military aid to Ukraine. 5 countries opposed it, including the United Kingdom and France. Well, you know, they gathered there, and Rutte, I think, proposed 0.25% of the country's GDP. That's a lot, honestly. Unless, of course, you mean the 3 Baltic states and their $300 in GDP for other countries like Germany. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that could be allocated to Ukraine. Well, Ukraine's needs. But things didn't turn out as expected because as soon as it went through the Ukrainians, no one supported it. According to the publication's sources, at least 7 countries supported the plan. And those are Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, and 3 other huge and powerful states. But the weaker countries with weaker economies like the United Kingdom, Spain, Italy, Canada, and France refused and said they were not thrilled with this idea. Well, since the NATO Charter requires unanimous support, Rutte, the excellent NATO Secretary General, had to give up. In short, it turns out that NATO isn't accepting Ukraine as a member, and now even the European Union is turning away from Ukraine. Zelensky, you remember, said that we want to be a full-fledged member of the European Union. And Merz didn't want Ukraine to be a full member and said, well, you can just sit there, listen to what we say, watch how we count the money, but just sit there and that's it. Zelensky got offended and said that while we are defending all of Europe like a steel porcupine, well, what are you doing? But Merz didn't listen, Melanie didn't listen, and the French leader Macron didn't listen either. Basically, no one cares. And yet, in Volyn, they are already preparing for all-around defense. I mentioned in one of my videos that the Zelensky administration has given instructions to Kyiv and the settlements in the Kyiv region to prepare for all-around defense. Supposedly, an offensive from Belarus and Russia is expected in those regions. Now they've involved Volyn as well. Apparently they've allocated funds. And here is barbed wire, some kind of wall. Well, it's for the photo. I think the photos turned out just fine. What the real situation with this wall is like is still unclear. Maybe like Yatsenyuk, who made a chain-link fence against tanks and then hugged it. Or maybe it's something else. But in general, they're getting ready. They say that in the Kovel district administration they're already super prepared and do not rule out the risk of a possible advance of Russian troops from the territory of Belarus. A representative of this administration stated that measures to strengthen the state border have been ongoing since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion. So, in other words, the budget is being used with full enthusiasm. I think every single penny has been spent there. The day before, representatives of border communities also took part in a meeting attended by the President of Ukraine. Full participation. They discussed strengthening the defense of border territories, but again, it's all about money, just money. We want to burn through budget funds to build 2 or 3 or 4 walls, or even 5 really. Lay 5 layers of chain-link fence there and let some chickens run between them. Combine the pleasant with the useful. It's both a fortification and a paradise for chickens. They can feed, and the chickens are also a source, as they used to say, like rabbits, of easily digestible protein, yes. The administration also emphasized that residents of border communities continue to live as usual and engage in agriculture. But it's true, as one of the administration representatives said, either you fight or you work for victory naturally. That's why agriculture is also working for victory now. As for that very attack on Kyiv last night, by the way, besides the garages, a really significant facility was damaged. The building where Zelensky and Mindich have apartments. It's the building on Hrushevsky Street, and there is real damage there. So, one of the decision-making centers, and actually the most real one, I'm not being sarcastic at all here, this really was a decision-making center, which makes the president's office and all the rest look minor by comparison. Mayors, Zelensky, and everyone else used to come there, read their reports, and hold meetings with each other. How can we better organize the work of the state, apparently, so that all citizens feel great and no one leaves feeling hurt like in the Strugatsky brothers' stories? Well, I mean, all the top officials, the people at the top, they should live well. In order to make people's lives even better, they are almost all put under digital control. 400,000 Ukrainians will fall under the control of a new state system, a tax system, and what are the risks? They tell us here that it hides the automatic exchange of data about the incomes of digital platforms. In short, a system is now being introduced according to which, whether you are a businessman or a housewife selling used socks and, God forbid, your husband's underwear, you are required to pay tax on everything you sell. If you sold 3 trainloads of something like coal or iron ore, you'll pay. If you sold socks, you'll pay. Well, the most interesting thing is that the tax for the entrepreneur who sold 3 trainloads with wagons of coal or iron ore will most likely be about the same as the tax imposed on that same housewife. Here they're telling us that the vague definition of personal services covers basically everyone who finds clients through online services. A wonderful country with lots of taxes that are supposed to make people's lives even better. For example, operators of digital platforms will have to automatically report their users' income directly to the state tax service. In short, all the data will basically be handed over. Then this decision will affect taxi drivers, couriers, those who rent out housing, and many others. Here, reporting activities include renting out real estate, personal services, selling goods, renting out vehicles, and so on and so on and so on. In addition, even lawyers will have to report, which, according to some sources, violates those very laws that used to grant, attorney-client privilege. Wonderful. Just wonderful. And on top of all that, Ukrainians will, and this is not for nothing, everyone will be checked to see whether an ordinary family's budget matches the social assistance they receive. If a family is low income, or if it's just an individual who is considered their own family, then they can apply for social benefits. God forbid if you bought it for 2 partners. If there are more partners, again, but this time not used ones, maybe from that very housewife on OLX, then this social benefit can be revoked due to large purchases, banking transactions, and even transfers between relatives. This is increasingly becoming a reason for social benefit checks in Ukraine. In general, there are now more checks being introduced than ever before. Again, all of this is done so that people can live better. I think this is noticeable now both in Ukraine and in other countries. As the latest advice goes, both in Europe and even in America, that life is getting better and merrier by the day. Share in the comments how your life is improving each day, what positive changes you've noticed, and by what percentage things have gotten better. Has your salary increased by 100, 200, maybe even by 4,000? How are you using benefits, and what benefits are you being provided? I think there's something to share here. And don't forget about that Telegram channel. There you can share information with all 20,000 users. There are a lot of people who want to discuss all of this. Next, there's an international news story. It's not very long, but it's not very short either. It seems like something good is starting to happen for Trump with that same Iran, which is now threatening all sorts of hellish punishments, not just to European countries, but to everyone. This includes cutting internet cables, and there are quite a few of them running under the Strait of Hormuz, and mining that strait, and controlling the passage of ships, which is exactly what they're doing. And to damage freshwater infrastructure and desalination facilities in Arab countries, in the countries of the Persian Gulf. And that would mean, well, that these countries won't be able to exist normally, but for now it looks like a deal is in the works. So the US and Iran have reached an agreement in principle that provides for the resumption of shipping through the Hormuz Strait. The details of the agreement still need to be worked out, and it's not yet clear what kind of control Iran will retain over the strait. Well, the advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says that the Islamic Republic has the legal right to control the strait. In addition, 3 former high-ranking Iranian officials stated that Iran has agreed to a memorandum of understanding that provides for the resumption of shipping through the strait. The US is lifting the naval blockade of Iranian ports and is ceasing military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. That's what these anonymous sources add. Well, how much they can be trusted is another question. But nevertheless, it's already good that all this is moving forward, more or less. Moreover, oil and petroleum products are starting to get a bit cheaper, which isn't very good for us, dear viewers, because we directly depend on all of this. And now today, we definitely need to watch and listen to the powerful leaders, because we can't do without them. Let's get started, and who will do the introduction for us? Tuka, who will dance a dance?
Victory plan, victory plan, victory, victory. It didn't work out.
Yes, it was wonderful, as always. Well, now we have a bunch of people today. For example, we have Tom O'Melian. Let me remind you, this outstanding figure, a patriot of his country, fled from Ukraine to the United Kingdom as soon as he was threatened with a case for evading military service. It turns out that O'Melian, while serving in the ranks of the valiant Ukrainian army in, I think, 2025 or so, refused to fulfill his official duties according to sources I have already mentioned. And then he left without authorization and claimed that he was wounded. He said a shell or an aerial bomb or a Fabi broke his bone. And he showed his leg wrapped in 2 layers of bandages. His bone was broken, and now he managed to get himself discharged and sent straight to the United Kingdom. And he has a criminal case against him in Ukraine. But nevertheless, he remains a powerful leader and continues to talk about the future of the entire Ukrainian nation. And this specialist again, who has already built a bunch of routes and the Hyperloop, the new transportation system proposed by Elon Musk, now it turns out he's also a nuclear expert. Can you imagine? So, basically an outstanding specialist. He's a military man, a transport expert, a manager, and a criminal. I mean, a good lawyer, yes. But let's take a look.
Do you think he'll work with nuclear charges in the future?
Well, that would be his last move. You have to understand that for us...
Why is he scanning the camera instead of looking? He looked, but nothing will change. Surrendering the country to a nuclear strike is common. Do you hear?
Surrendering the country under nuclear threat is essentially the same as dying.
Yeah, you can tell he's a specialist right away. Both a political scientist and a speleologist. I mean a sociologist and a philologist. Короче, у Амеляна надо просто место не найти, куда очередное клеймо специалиста поставить.
В випадку застосування ядерної тактичної зброї це теоретично можливо, але...
Yeah, theoretically, Amelian receives signals apparently directly in his brain from the Kremlin from some representatives and immediately broadcasts them to us, dear viewers. It's like a contactee from my science channel. There's a link to it right here in the description. Check it out, it's interesting. And there they show different contactees, both male and female, who keep making contact, but so far there's no report. We also have this kind of specialist. Look at this military guy, right in the thick of things. The kid's just been dragged out. Oh, and that's Molotov Lenin sitting on the left. He apparently transformed back from young Elton John, and now they're interrogating the kid, asking what it's like in the war, kid.
I'm an honest, humble man, a huge fan of unmanned aerial systems.
We're very glad. Keep us posted.
If there's no infantry, any pilot without a cap will become an infantryman.
A pilot without a cap, if there's no infantry, will turn into that very infantryman. Well, right away we see an infantryman. Look, a mighty man who came to share with us. He even closed his eyes, remembering all his feats. At night he comes in right away, takes a whole platoon prisoner, captures pillboxes and bunkers, breaks through fortifications. In short, Lenin looks at this sarcasm with disapproval. That's not good. You need to look approving and smile.
Whether you're in artillery, tanks, recon, or any other role.
A cook?
A pilot on the front line will definitely turn into infantry.
Well, yeah.
Definitely.
Lenin was thinking about how not to end up on the front lines as an infantryman. He was thinking, damn, what should I do to avoid that? Probably next time I shouldn't stuff a crumpled white handkerchief into my jacket pocket, but rather a nice black satin one. It would look much better.
We need to train quality military personnel in infantry, and I congratulate all the soldiers and Cossacks.
Cossacks. Well, this is a Cossack, it just doesn't fit. It's awkward. The combat Hopak probably danced so hard that the stage is cracking. Who else do we have next? Here we have a psychologist who came and is telling us about this. Zelensky's press secretary, Yulia Mendel, who told us a lot of interesting things, saying that all of this is the work of Russian agents. Who else but a psychologist can judge this? Who else but a psychologist? After all, a psychologist always does. Apparently, she worked in some kind of counterintelligence systems and can immediately spot where the Russian agent is, where the Chinese agent is, where the agent from somewhere like Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia is, I mean. Well, she's an excellent specialist.
Це російська пропаганда. Вона давним-давно є носієм проросійських оцих всіх речей.
This woman apparently has been tracking Yulia Mendel since she was in diapers.
Someone was even exposed as an agent. So the security service should be working here. Yulia Mendel, everything you blurted out is an absolutely anti-Ukrainian information campaign. I think that's obvious.
Yes, basically, if you fight against corruption, then it's immediately considered working for Russia. And if you don't fight corruption, but actually lead it, then you're a great, powerful leader who can lead your nation forward. Straight to the light. Well, or to whatever replaces it. That's how it is, dear listeners. Write in the comments what you think about this. Don't forget to subscribe to this wonderful channel. Goodbye, everyone.
What do you think the world's reaction should be, and what is it now? Well, of course, there should be a reaction, and it should have happened a long time ago, to give Ukraine all possible weapons, including nuclear ones, so that my Ukraine could defend itself. That would change everything drastically. That would be ideal.